Hello, my name is Winn. I'm an Iron Speed MVP, and this is part 4 of a 4-part video series of using third-party controls in Iron Speed Designer. In the first 3 segments, we discussed the file and directory changes that you need to make so that Iron Speed Designer can use a third-party control. In part 2, we discussed how to bring the code into Iron Speed Designer, leveraging that relationship of the HTML page and the ASPX page in Iron Speed Designer to produce the code changes that we need and to successfully build and run the application. In part 3, I demonstrated how we can leverage Visual Studio.net's IDE to edit our Iron Speed application in place, and how we can compile and run our application using both Visual Studio and Iron Speed Designer side by side. In this part 4, what we're going to discuss is how to take that control that we've been working on, or that third-party data grid that we've been configuring, and how to turn that into a permanent control in the Iron Speed Designer toolbox. To give you some idea of where we're heading, let me just go ahead and show you what I've done so far. In our design view, here is our code. You don't see anything, you can't tell that we've got a control in there, but sure enough, here's our directive underneath, and here's our grid configuration code. So we know we have a component art grid in there. And now I've been through a lot of time and energy getting this grid configured, and I want to be able to reuse it in this application and other applications without having to put in so much work. And that's where Iron Speed's done us a total service by giving us access to this toolbox. And here you're going to see that I've got a component art tab, and I've included a component art grid control. And if I wanted, I can just drag this out onto my form, but we're going to save that. Let's go ahead and talk about how we can bring our own custom code into Iron Speed Designer as a third-party control, or how we can bring other third-party controls into the toolbox for us to reuse. And to do that, we're going to leverage an article that was written by Miles Gibson that talks about bringing controls into the Iron Speed toolbox. And if you search the Iron Speed knowledge base online for articles by Miles Gibson, it should be about the 5th or the 6th one down. So let's get started. And to begin with, what I want to do is jump into the Iron Speed Designer directory. And so I am in the program files, C:program files, the Iron Speed directory, version 4.0.3, which gives us this toolbox controls directory. Ahead of time, to shorten the amount of time I would spend in this example, I have created a component art folder. And this also is the exact name that our toolbox will have, component art. And in this folder, I went ahead and, as Miles' article explains, I copied Infragistics XML templates and images into our thumbnails folder so that I could accelerate this tutorial. Here is our component art grid XML. Here is the supporting image that will actually show up and has already shown up in the Iron Speed toolbox. And I should mention that there is a very strong relationship between this image name, uppercase CA-grid.gif, and this XML file name, uppercase CA-grid.xml. There's a one-to-one link there where that's how Iron Speed Designer knows which image to associate in the toolbox. And here's that image. It does that because those files have the same name. Here's our component art grid.xml file, and I'm going to stave off an in-depth discussion of how to set this up. I will provide this file online. Let's just do a quick and dirty review of this file, just to talk about a high-level overview of what we've done in here. Here are the actual properties of the control itself, in terms of this would be where you would put copyright statements, that type of thing. Here we just have some basic text, and I've fully commented all of this. What I want to show here is all the way down at the bottom, we've got some sections here where, because of how this XML file is structured, IronSpeed Designer will pick up this code in here and it will insert it into our pages for us. So there's our directive for using the control. Here's our code behind that should look familiar from the other examples that will be automatically inserted into the ASPX page for us. And here is our supporting functions that we need in the code behind page. And you'll see I've got, this is the exact same name that's in the code behind, this load data. It's not actually going to overwrite that call. What it's going to do is it's just going to insert this code right here in the appropriate place in this page load data event in IronSpeed Designer. And the same with this code, it will, because of how we've tagged this here, C# page sub, it will create this sub for us in the IronSpeed Designer code behind page. So we've kind of talked about the relationship between this XML file, the image, we've got our supporting thumbnails directory, we've created our component art directory and the toolbox controls. Let's go ahead and see how we can use this in our applications now to produce reusable code. So I'm going to jump back into my third-party example, and in the Application Explorer I'm going to get my demonstrations folder. And what I want to do here is right-click and select New Page. And we want the empty page type, and I am going to call this Component Art Toolbox Example. And it's going to build in our demonstrations folder. I'm going to click OK. And again, as I've noted previously, we don't have our code behind page at all yet, and we won't until we build this application. And now briefly, let's just look in our blank page to make sure there's no hocus pocus going on here. I don't have any component art directives. I don't have any grid code at all. My ASPX code behind page looks very boring. There's nothing happening here. And as of yet, our code is unchanged. Here's our load data event with our call into the base class. Nothing happening here. Let's go ahead now and let's reuse our code by dragging this control from the toolbox and dropping it onto our page. And now we get a nice visual indicator that we've got a control here. Every time we drag that control onto a form, we've always got to configure it. So let's just get started by doing that. And in this configure, if you read Miles' article all the way through, you're going to see how to set this up where it's going to prompt us for the DLL that we need in order to use this control. So I'm just going to click the Browse button. I'm in our third-party directory. I'm just going to go into that bin folder where we've already copied the component art UI DLL, and I'm just going to select it, and then I'm going to hit Next. Now here this wizard is showing us the code it's going to insert into our ASPX page for us. So let's hit Finish, and let's save, let's build, and let's go see what we've accomplished. You have to mess around with the formatting a lot to get this to insert in a gentle way. Here it's inserted our declaration for us, and it has also inserted in our grid properties, and it's picked up my comments out of the XML file. We can delete those, they're in here. I simply have those comments in so as you read the file you know what you're looking at. but everything in here looks right. Let's go see our ASPX page where it should have also included this code. And it has. It's done this for us. The last thing we want to do is just check our code, and sure enough, the formatting is a mess, but it has put this in the right place where we want it in our load data call, and it's included this sub for us. So let's go ahead now and build this application and let it all looks. Hopefully what we should see here is a nice example for reusing code in Speed Designer through the toolbox. And sure enough, here is our entire example that we've been building through this 4-part series, and we didn't have to really touch any code to make this work. It automatically picked up the code for us, it inserted it into our project. Everything looks great. I'm really pleased with this. So in this video, what we've discussed is how to take code that we intend to reuse and turn it into a control that we can use in the Speed Designer toolbox and accomplish really some incredible code reuse doing this. If you missed anything along the way, let's just review what we've done. We have inside of Speed Designer, C Program Files, Speed Designer 4.0.3, there is a directory toolbox controls. I've created this component art directory, and from the Infragistics directory I copied out one XML file and the thumbnails directory and one image. I pasted those into here, and of course I created my own image to go along with the application, and we've created our own XML file. And when we do this, if we close and reopen Speed will pick up on this directory. It will create for us in the Designer toolbox. It will create that directory tab name, and it will show us the controls we have available to us from that directory. And this is just probably one of the coolest things in Speed Designer for code reuse. It's a really satisfying way to bring other controls into Speed Designer so that you can reuse them. And here's another example of a control I've brought in, which is the FCK what you see is what you get HTML editor. And again, I can just drag that out onto this form and it'll start working. So that wraps up the 4-part video series that I wanted to produce that demonstrates how to use third-party controls in Speed Designer and how to make them reusable controls in the Speed Designer toolbox. I will be uploading all these videos to the website. Feel free to post responses with questions or to ask anything I might have missed, and I will see you in my next video series. Thank you.